Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Overthinker's Guide to Love. I'm so happy you're here. If you clicked on this episode, I'm guessing you probably spent a little too much time replaying conversations in your head, analyzing text messages, and trying to figure out what someone really meant. Maybe you looked at your phone and thought, did I say something wrong? Why haven't they texted me back? Are they losing interest? And somehow, within an hour, you've gone from they're probably just busy to, oh my gosh, they hate me. I'm going to end up alone. No judgment here. I've been there too several times. I think almost all of us have had those moments where we're staring at our phone thinking, okay, it's been 3 hours. Are they busy? Did they forget? Or are they purposely not answering me? And then suddenly you're replaying our last conversations, rereading old messages, and trying to solve a problem that may not even exist. If you're sitting here and thinking, wow, that's literally me, first of all, welcome. You're in good company. You're human. And second, this podcast is for you. Hi, I'm Elena. I'm a psychology student who is endlessly fascinated by why our minds do this. Why do relationships make us question ourselves? And why does uncertainty feel so uncomfortable? And why do our brains seem to jump to the worst case scenarios so quickly? Because here's the thing. Most of us think we're overthinking because we care too much, or because we're needy, or dramatic. But psychology tells us something very different. Most of the time, overthinking is actually our mind's attempt to protect us. It's our brain trying to make sense of uncertainty, avoid rejection, keep us emotionally safe. So, for our very first episode, I thought we'll start with the question that inspired the entire podcast. Why do we overthink relationships? And maybe more importantly, what's actually happening in our minds when we start to spiral? Because guess what? It's not because we're needy. It's not because we care too much. Not because we're dramatic. So let's get into it. One of the things I find most fascinating about psychology is that our brains are basically prediction machines. Whether we realize it or not, our brains are constantly asking, what's happening? What's happening next? Am I safe? Can I trust this person? And honestly, relationships are full of uncertainty. Nobody hands us a guidebook explaining exactly what another person's thinking, unfortunately. We don't know why someone took 3 hours to answer our text. We don't know why they seem quieter today. We don't know if they need space, had a stressful day, fell asleep, or simply forgot to respond. And if you're an overthinker, your brain does not like those unanswered questions at all. I remember one time I sent a message and didn't hear back for hours. At first, I was like completely fine. And then I started wondering, then I started analyzing, and then somehow I convinced myself that I had said something wrong and the entire relationship was doomed. Meanwhile, absolutely nothing had happened. I had created an entire story in my head, just in my head. And I think a lot of us do that. When uncertainty shows up, our brain often treats it like a problem that needs to be solved immediately. Part of this part of this involves a brain region called the amygdala, which acts like our brain's alarm system. The amygdala is constantly scanning for potential threats. The interesting thing is that it doesn't only react to danger, it also reacts to emotional threats. So a delayed message, your amygdala is like, oh no, your heart drops, your stomach drops. It's like, oh no, oh no, oh no, like cop car sirens, like something's wrong, something's wrong. But a delayed message isn't dangerous at all. But uncertainty can feel dangerous. So your brain starts paying really close attention. It starts looking for clues. It starts asking questions. And before you know it, the spiral begins. But uncertainty alone doesn't explain why relationships can hurt so deeply. To understand that, we have to talk about something that's felt in every single one of us, our need for connection. As humans, we're wired for connection. Relationships aren't just something that's nice to have. Connection actually matters to our brains. If you think about it, from the moment we're born, we depend on relationships for comfort, safety, survival. We have moms, we have dads, we have sisters, we have brothers, we have cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, dogs, cats, fishes, turtles, hamsters. We have a lot of connections since we've been born. So when a relationship suddenly feels uncertain, our brain often interprets that uncertainty as a possible loss. And here's the part that completely blew my mind when I first learned about it. So I'm excited to share. Research has shown that social rejection activates some of the same brain regions involved in physical pain, which means rejection doesn't just hurt emotionally to your brain, it hurts. That's why breakups can feel heavy in your chest. That's why being ignored can make your stomach drop. That's why being left on red can somehow ruin your mood for the next few hours. I think that's why being left on red feels so intense also. To someone, it might seem like a little thing, not that big of a deal. But to you, to your brain as an overthinker, it may be interpreting it as something has changed, connection might be threatened. Your brain isn't pretending that emotional pain is real. To your brain, it is real, which means when we sense rejection or disconnection, our minds immediately want to do something about it. And what does the brain do when it counters a problem? It tries to solve it. This is where overthinking enters the picture. Overthinking is often our attempt to regain a sense of control. We start analyzing everything. What did they mean by that? Why did they put a period at the end of the text? Why did they like my picture but not respond to my message? Should I text again? Should I wait? I sometimes joke that overthinkers could work for the FBI because we will gather every piece of evidence available to create an entire timeline. Like, oh, the snap score went up 10. Oh, he snapped 5 people. Oh, his followers went up. He must be active on Instagram. Oh, Snapchat said he was active 50 minutes ago, but I sent a text an hour ago. Why didn't he respond? And honestly, it makes sense. Our brain thinks that if we can just gather enough information, we'll finally feel better. But here's the problem. Relationships don't always provide immediate answers. Sometimes people need space. Sometimes they're busy. Sometimes they're overwhelmed. And sometimes we simply don't know. And when our brain can't find an answer, it starts creating stories. I think this is where so many of us suffer because most of our pain doesn't come from facts. It comes from stories we create. Let me say that again. Most of our pain doesn't come from facts. It comes from stories we create in our brain. So let's do a few examples by what I mean by that. So this is a fact. They haven't texted me back in 6 hours. The story your brain is creating for you. They're losing interest. Fact. They seemed quieter tonight. Story. I did something wrong. Fact. They canceled plans. Story. They don't want to be in my life anymore. Our brains are incredibly creative. Unfortunately, when we're anxious, that creativity tends to lean toward worst case scenarios. And I wonder how many relationships we've suffered through twice, once in reality, and 100 times in our heads. So if our brains naturally do this, what are we supposed to do? The answer isn't eliminating uncertainty, because that's impossible, unfortunately. The answer is learning how to tolerate it. So the next time you notice yourself spiraling, pause and ask yourself, what do I know for certain? What story am I creating? And what evidence do I actually have? You don't have to believe every thought your brain offers you. Thoughts are not facts. Emotions are not predictions. And uncertainty isn't automatically danger. Let me say that again. Thoughts are not facts. Emotions are not predictions. And uncertainty isn't automatically danger. I think one of the healthiest things we can say to ourselves is, I don't know what's happening right now, and that's okay. I can tolerate not having all the answers. Because the truth is, overthinking doesn't protect us from getting hurt. Most of the time, it just makes us suffer sooner. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? I want you to think about this. Overthinking doesn't protect us from getting hurt. It just makes us suffer sooner. Understanding why we overthink is important, but it's only half the equation. The real question becomes, what do we do when we're laying in bed, or playing a conversation for the 10th time, or staring at our phone waiting for a text back? Let's think. I'll tell you. This is what you should do. First, pause. I know that sounds simple, but overthinking creates a sense of urgency. It convinces us that we need to figure out everything right now. Most of the time, we don't need to. Second, separate facts from the stories. Ask yourself, what do I know for certain? And what assumptions am I making? And third, give yourself another explanation. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're having a difficult day. Our anxious minds tend to jump to the worst case scenario first. Challenge yourself to consider other possibilities. And finally, redirect your attention. Go for a walk, call a friend, listen to music. My favorite, journal. Journal what do you want to say to this person. Journal what's bothering you. Journal what's making you anxious. A lot of time after you do that, you feel better. You get it out. Don't throw your anxious thoughts to that person. Write it down in a journal. Do something that brings you back to the present moment. Because here's the truth. The goal isn't to never overthink again. The goal is to notice your mind is creating stories and gently bring yourself back to reality. And I don't think any of us overthink because we want to be anxious. I think most of us overthink because we care. We care about being understood. We care about being loved. And sometimes, if we're being really honest, we care about not getting hurt again. So our minds start searching for answers, looking for clues, trying to predict what's going to happen next. Not because we're broken, but because we're human. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today's episode, it's this. Overthinking relationships doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're too much. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It means you are very human. You have a very human brain that's trying its best to protect you from uncertainty, rejection, and emotional pain. And honestly, I think there's something comforting about that. Because if our brains learn to respond this way, we can also learn to respond differently. Healing happens when we stop demanding certainty from every situation and start trusting ourselves to handle whatever happens next. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for the very first episode of the Overthinker's Guide to Love. And remember, not every unanswered question needs an immediate answer. Sometimes peace is found in learning that uncertainty is something you can survive. So until the next episode, be curious about your mind and gentle with your heart. Bye.